shared by a number of politicians across the UK, most prominently certain Muslim politicians across the UK. Here, let us be totally frank.
Please.
If there are people in the UK who are offended by the posters of missing Jewish children, they must leave the UK. We do not want them.
Wow.
It is not Jews who should be fearful in the UK. It is the people who would make Jews fearful. They must leave. It is shameful to me that in the last few weeks I have had friends from around the world, including Jewish friends, saying, is it safe any longer to come to England, to come to Britain, specifically to come to London? It is not Jews who should fear being in London, it is the people who would make them fearful. Is that they will observe the crowd and they will see if anyone breaks the law. And if they do break the law, they may get a visit at some point later from the police and they may be arrested. This happened in the 2000s with Anjem Chowdhury and the group members of Al-Mujahirun. There was a very similar thing. There was once actually an occasion when Al-Mujahirun came for me personally in the streets of London, and I was amazed that the British police didn't do more to protect me or, well, anyway. And it turned out that they were doing the same thing, which is they hang back in order to arrest people later.
Cowardice,
well, here's
cowardice.
The problem with that. The world only sees the crime being committed. The world does not see the follow-up. The world is very interested in watching the streets of London at the moment and are horrified by what they see. They do not see the tiny number of arrests that the Metropolitan Police has been willing to actually carry out of people who are supporting Hamas on our streets.
And not only that, by the way, Douglas, we saw a couple of years ago people who drove down from Blackburn, quite far away from London, to go into Jewish areas and through megaphones shout, rape Jewish women, kill Jewish women.
That shouldn't be allowed under free speech laws.
Those people were arrested and not prosecuted.
Yes.
Maybe they should have tweeted it.
BS.
Yeah, they should have.
BS.
Called them. What was the crime that Lawrence Fox committed again? That brought the whole world crashing down a few weeks ago.
They should have said they wouldn't shag them, which is the opposite of what they seem to be.
Wasn't that a good idea? They should have gone through Jewish areas saying, I wouldn't shag them. That would have got the police interested and probably Ofcom. That would have got the Guardian going for months. My God, we've been diverted, haven't we? Here's the thing. The police are also, of course, in this strange case of several cases we now have on camera of the police taking down the posters of missing, stolen Jewish children that have been put up in London and other places. And as well as being ripped down.
What the hell is that?
Muslims in the UK and leftists in the UK.
That's just absolute bullshit again.
Now by police in the UK. We have footage of the Metropolitan Police taking down these posters. Two things about that, if I may. The first is we should follow the example of some blue-collar workers in New York and elsewhere in America recently who have found these scumbags taking down posters and confronted them. If the police are not going to confront people ripping down posters and trying to hurt Jews on the streets of Britain, again, I would like the public to do so. And I think the public should start to do so. And that is what will happen if the police do not protect the public. The public will have to start protecting the public. The second thing...
May I just on that?
Sure.
Aren't we being slightly dishonest at Douglas? The demographic situation in the UK is very different.
It is...
I don't know that if I was to challenge somebody in the street doing that I, frankly, at this point would have the support of the people around me. I wonder if I might find myself in the minority.
Okay, well, what will happen at some point is that a group of people who are in a majority will come down from some other part of London, of the UK, and they'll do it themselves. And who would say that that was a bad thing?
At this point, yeah.
At this point, if this is all on the table, oh, they're going to regret it. The police are going to deeply regret this. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, and let me be as clear as possible on this, The police clearly seem to think in the UK that the big problem is that it is provocative to put up posters of abducted Jewish children, and that is because it will provoke community tensions. This, by the way, is not a fringe view. It is a view clearly shared by a number of politicians across the UK, most prominently certain Muslim politicians across the UK. Here, let us be totally frank.
Please.
If there are people in the UK who are offended by the posters of missing Jewish children, they must leave the UK. We do not want them.
Wow.
It is
absolutely.
not Jews who should be fearful in the UK. It is the people who would make Jews fearful. They must leave. It is shameful to me that in the last few weeks I have had friends from around the world, including Jewish friends, saying, is it safe any longer to come to England, to come to Britain, specifically to come to London? It is not Jews who should fear being in London, it is the people who would make them fearful.
Absolutely.
So at some point, the Jews, who are a very small minority in the UK, a little over 200,000, they are dwarfed by the large size of the Muslim community in the UK at the moment, but fine. The non-Muslim population of the UK is far larger. And by and large, in my experience, they are very good people. The British still have pride in their past that has not been beaten out of them. They still have a sense of the goodness of our nation.
Absolutely.
The pride of our nation, of what it has done in the past that we should be grateful for and proud of.
Continue to do
and what
so
it might
in the
still
future.
do now.
Absolutely.
Despite decades of indoctrination to try to tell us that we are wicked, that is really only believed by a small number of people who happen to have control of many of the major institutions and who have a disproportionate voice in the media and a disproportionate presence in what used to be called academia.
Same in America.
We'll
Same in America. Absolutely.
Do you not worry, Douglas, that with what you're saying, that we're going to be pretty soon, not that you're advocating, I want to make that clear, that we're going to be on the path.
When I started drinking warm water for my prostate, my friends laughed at me. But when they saw how much I'd improved, they started doing it themselves. You've probably heard that once you have a swollen prostate, life will never be the same. You'll have to get used to constantly feeling like you need to pee. The weak flow and the difficulties starting and stopping and the sleeplessness.
After a pretty unpleasant government pretty soon.
Well, we've got Starmer, of course, but that's a different thing. But what we'll have is, this will all be suppressed again and again and again until you can't suppress it anymore. And it will not be a matter of party affiliation or parties in power. It will simply start to happen on the streets. The British public are being pushed beyond our endurance. And
there will
if
become
we are
a breaking
waiting for
point.
a political outlet, I think that a large number of people will start to think we don't have a political outlet. The Home Secretary and the government say things, and yet they do not happen.
Cowards.
The Labour Party say things and promise things, and yet they do not happen. I'm old enough to remember when the last Labour government, whilst ratcheting up mass immigration into the UK, talked about the dangers of mass immigration. I well remember people like, what was his name? There was a Labour immigration minister in about 2007 who gave a front-page interview to the Times of London, which he talked about the downsides of multiculturalism, how everything had gone wrong with it, and we needed to get control of our borders. We've heard these people from right and left, Labour and Conservative. None of them ever do what they say, and
Never.
it seems
They never do
because they can't.
anything.
So I very much fear, again, as you say, I'm not advocating it, I'm observing it. I very much fear that in the years ahead, this is past the parties. More people are members of the Birdwatchers Association of the UK than belong to all of the nation's political parties. So clearly people don't believe that political parties are the way forward, or able to do anything, or anything much. So we'll see what's happened. But you know, the public didn't get us here. I was asked by a senior member of the BBC shortly after the atrocities of 2017 what I thought had gone wrong and why the BBC and others were now incapable of speaking to the general public and were missing the general public. And I remember this person
They've gone
said,
left.
what should we do, Douglas? And I said, it's a bit late now,
Yep.
isn't it?
So
I
true.
said, I feel when you ask me this and expect my answer,
It's like the
like
New York
somebody who has
Crimes.
been pushed deliberately into a swimming pool in their full clothing and then asked why they're wet. I didn't want to be here. I didn't want my nation to be here. But we've been pushed here. We'll see what we do.
Douglas, I want to ask you about the role of the BBC and the media more generally, but we'll continue this conversation on locals. We'll do about 40 minutes or so on that because we've done almost an hour here. So follow us over there.
So Douglas, painting a picture there that's, I don't know, I look at it and think that's kind of a sort of grim-like, meaning that if the police are not going to step in, the public will. The public will do the job of the police. I mean, you're going to have groups that are coming up. I mean, isn't that sort of, what happened with the birth of the EDL? That's just, but it's just so unfortunate that the levers of power that are supposed to protect the public, that is the number one thing that these institutions are supposed to do. Protect the general public from harm. And yet, they're siding with the people that are either doing the violence, perpetrating the violence, or calling for the perpetration of violence or the incitement of violence. But yet the police have no problem going to someone's house, knocking on the door or breaking in and basically saying that you were online on Twitter or on Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat or whatever the hell social media crap, version, modality you were on, and you said that someone was an idiot, fat, wasn't a man, wasn't a woman, you misgendered somebody, and we need to arrest your what. And then you appear in court, you pay a fine, you're found guilty of calling somebody fat, or calling a man a woman, or a woman a man, or saying that a man can't be a woman and a woman can't be a man, or you don't want to use pronouns, or called somebody a wrong pronoun, or somebody just made some lie up about you, but the court took it as truth. Community service, sometimes you go to freaking jail. Mostly people, probably the common man, the common woman. And that's what happens in the United Kingdom. And people wonder what the hell's going on. That's what happens here, folks. It's what we call country class versus country club class. People say there's two different levels of, of punishment, two different levels of justice in America. It's like the Hillary Clintons and the establishment and the elites and then the regular people, that if we had done a tenth of what those people did, we'd be handcuffed behind our backs, perp walked out of our homes at the point of guns, SWAT team, 20, 30 people there with rifles and machine guns pointed at your kids and your wife and and anybody else that are family members there. And you taken out of your home in the middle of the morning, all because, you had the audacity to say something wrong against somebody in power. But somebody in power says the same thing and nothing happens to them. No, they get called to come on a show, MSLSD or one of the Alphabet or the Google networks. Two-tier form of justice. I think there's more than two-tier form of justice that happens in the United States and obviously in Britain. The haves and the have-nots. And this happens on both sides of the aisle. Labor conservative over across the pond. You have conservative and Democrats and Republicans over here on this side of the Atlantic. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, but that's what happens. If you've got money, if you've got the power, you might be able to escape the wrath of justice because the scales don't balance equally. They're heavily weighted on the elite, the establishment class, what we call the country club class. What do we say all the time? What do? They make rules for thee, but not for the we, the establishment and the elites. Anyways, folks, we appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. Hope you enjoyed this this conversation, this interview with Douglas Murray and Konstantin Kisin. We'd love for you to go ahead, smack that subscription bell if you like our content. Like, share, and follow us. You all know what to do. And I'll leave with my final thought, which is, when you're right, and when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.